You might remember Brad Parscale from President Trump's 2016 campaign. He became known for the digital strategy that he used to help the president get elected.
He is now the president's 2020 campaign manager, and there's a new profile of him from ProPublica called "The Myths of the Genius Behind Trump's Reelection Campaign." Peter Elkind is a senior reporter for ProPublica, as well as the author of that article, and he joins us now from Fort Worth, Texas. Good to see you.
Good to be with you.
So this is, I think, really an illuminating report that you put together here, Peter, in profiling Parscale. You write that much of what we know about Parscale has come primarily from himself, and much of the things that he's claimed aren't necessarily true, or at least they're not as they appear to be on the surface.
Yeah, he is fundamentally a salesman, and he's a salesman in the context of his own life story. And in being that way, in pitching himself, he says things that simply aren't true. He's sort of crafted his tale into an American dream story. And while he's worked hard and succeeded and prospered, it's not nearly the story that he portrays. It's not as he describes it.
So give us a couple highlights. What are some of the things that he uses when he's sort of whipping up the crowd that you found out really, doesn't pass the smell test?
Well, I mean, there's different elements of the, the sort of salesmanship. Some of it is in the interest of Trump and saying things that are, sort of making Trump's case in much the same way Trump does that aren't true. That all Democrats want to get rid of private health care, that the Green New Deal would, banish cows and air travel, all sorts of absurd things like that. That's one element of it. But he's also making up stories and telling and falsifying sort of fundamental facts about his biography in speeches. And one element of it is simply that, he started his business with his last $500. This is his business in San Antonio, Texas, which is, part of his origin story. And that's simply not true. He actually owned 2 houses in San Antonio at that point. He'd been paid $95,000 to work for a 3D company run by his father in California. Prior to that, he had some money. He certainly was not destitute. And he's offering this sort of romantic tale about his own rise. It is a great story. I mean, he's an extraordinary figure to become campaign manager for a president of the United States. But it's not as he describes it.
Yeah, and Peter, one of the things that I found really interesting, and this sometimes strikes me as typical of several of the people that are in the Trump administration, not those necessarily true believers that were along with the president when he was a candidate very early on, but people who have since glommed on to the administration. You've got a quote from people that knew him before he ever met Donald Trump, that he was not a political guy. He was not an ideologue. He was not a bomb thrower. He was, apolitical, if anything. And yet, when he's at these rallies, he's the loudest, most vocal supporter of everything that Donald Trump is doing. And this guy that you interview says that really, and sort of what you said earlier, that he was basically a hustler.
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. I mean, he was not even close to being an ideologue. He was a tech guy. He was a marketer. He was not a true believer, and now he's embraced that and become, Trumpier than Trump, or as Trumpy as Trump, I guess. But there's actually a colleague of his that worked with him in San Antonio closely who said, he wanted the job. He liked being working for a big shot. He liked being in the center of things, and I could have imagined him doing the same stuff for Hillary. It wasn't a matter of partisanship, certainly at the start. Back then he was tweeting, but it was about the salad size at fast food restaurants. It wasn't about Bernie and Biden. So he's really transformed in multiple ways for the time when he was in San Antonio, say in 2015, to today.
So how instrumental was he in helping to get the president elected in 2016? And is the answer, it depends on who you ask?
That's right. I mean, he certainly he deserves credit but perhaps for different things than he's given credit for. I think he's embraced the role both in taking victory laps after the campaign and in promoting his private business after the campaign for being kind of the genius that got Trump elected. And he's went around afterwards to commercial potential commercial clients saying, hey, I can do for you, corporate business, if you'll pay me a lot, what I did for Donald Trump. I can work the same magic. They called it the Parscale effect. He certainly promoted himself that way. In fact, I think his true genius was actually managing the very sort of internecine politics of Trump's world, surviving it, sort of bringing together actually very skillfully a group of experts in social media marketing, people who had skills that he didn't have and experience that he didn't have, and he cobbled them together in a remarkably short period of time and made it all work. So, arguably, that's what he really deserves credit for, sort of management skill in this sort of snake pit that is Trump world.
And one of the things that you also point out in the piece, Peter, is, and this has been reported before, that the Trump administration, they like lowball figures. If you're going to do work for the Trump organization, you've got to come in with a much lower bid than other groups that may be competing for that work, because they don't like to pay a lot of money. Some would argue that's how you stay rich, right? But it's interesting to me that so he lowballed the estimates for the work that he would do for the Trump organization. But now you're reporting that he is making millions and millions and millions of dollars from the RNC.
Well, he's making from a number of sources. That's exactly right. I mean, for starters, he got work for the Trump organization by offering a really low-ball bid to do commercial work for the real estate business. And then he became kind of the go-to guy for the Trumps for some of their other businesses. The winery, Eric Trump's foundation, he did that work for free. And then when the campaign came around, he offered an incredibly low-ball bid for setting up the website, a landing page, $1,500. When Trump actually decided to run, he was asking for $10,000. All these great prices, so great that Trump was bragging about it on the day in Trump Tower when he came down the escalator and announced. He said, "Oh, I get my websites for pennies." And surely Parscale may have been in his mind when he did that. Now, flash forward, in the aftermath, a huge amount of money passed through Parscale's company in the 2016 election, $94 million. Most of that, without question, was a pass-through and went to buy digital advertising. But he made some good money in that. It's not clear exactly how much. He certainly hasn't disclosed it. Moving forward into 2017 and 2018, he was in private business, but also doing political work, and made millions for the Trump campaign, for a dark money group, and also in the commercial world. Then he finally got chosen as campaign manager in February of 2018, and a whole lot of money has passed through his business. He's made a big point, because Trump is so cheap, of saying, "Oh, I'm only getting $300,000 from the Trump campaign, and I'm not taking any commissions on digital advertising," which is what he did in 2016. However, he neglected to mention that that his company, I should say, was taking commissions for digital advertising from the RNC, $18 million in fees total. Most of that went to ads, but he was taking profits on that, and he didn't bother to mention that. He also set up a subsidiary business, a kind of secret LLC, so that he could continue to do work for America First. And he says he was firewalled from doing that. It's all legal. But he continued. He set this up secretly so that he could continue making money. His company could continue making money doing that as well.
Finally, Peter, let me just ask you, as we head into the 2020 race here, he is in charge of the president's campaign for re-election. Given that when he was a candidate for the presidency, the president said he would only hire the best and the brightest. There have been so many departures from the administration, and often those departures have to do with whether or not these individuals sort of toe the line and are loyal to the president. Parscale, is very loyal to the president, but there are reports out there that the operation has gotten much bigger. Those people that were considered swamp people back in the day are now part of the operation to re-elect the president. And given that some of these individuals are not the best and the brightest, he is not the greatest coder or designer that you could find probably out there to develop a website and run a campaign for you, is he in danger of being edged out, even with the loyalty that he provides to the president?
That's a really good question, and kind of the I don't know, the $94 million question or the $18 million question, but it's a big question. There's no question. There's no dispute that people on the fringes of Trump world are gunning for him as they would for anybody at the top in this campaign operation. It's just the nature of that beast. It's unclear. I mean, we'll find out whether he's the right guy. He certainly was the right guy and a good fit for Trump in 2016 as digital director. His strengths were Trump's needs. And he is, without question, made a big point of trying to cozy up and ingratiate himself to the family, constantly flattering them, declaring his admiration, love, and affection for the Trumps, the greatest family ever, smartest folks ever, nicest guys ever. That goes a long way, but it's ultimately a really difficult environment, and he's in a different world now. He's not, having a secondary role, a second-level role in a upstart campaign. He's now created a war machine. What one operative told me described as the Death Star, where he's indeed cozying up to all those swamp creatures and gotten their help. And he's learned from 2016 that he can benefit from that. And he's created symbiotic relationships. So they're doing big dollar fundraising. They're doing outreach to various minority groups. They're doing everything now. It's a all the bells and whistles kind of campaign, not the sort that he was very involved in 2016. So we'll see how that plays out. He's certainly, at the same time, embracing the Trump view that, it's all going great. He's the greatest president ever. And we'll see if that story succeeds.
All right. Peter Elkind, thank you very much. Great reporting. We appreciate it.
Good to be with you. Thanks very much for having me.